I did call it to order at 9, just by the way.
So we have Harlan Zortman.
Here.
Josh Dransky.
Present.
Glenn Pepper.
Here.
Jenna Reed. Here. And Lauren Selly. Here. And then staff, we have Molly O'Donnell. Here. Lisa Galliner. Here. And Sarah. Here. And Kendra is somewhere.
Okay. Everybody have time to take a look at the minutes of the August meeting. I need a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second? I'll second. Okay. All in favor? Just raise your hand.
I have to abstain.
You weren't here. Okay. All right, they approved. They approved it. I don't know. I'm not with it today. All right. Do we have any public invited to be heard? I'm surprised nobody's here. All right. Organizational updates.
We don't have any this go around, that's just our standing item.
Okay. Development and project updates.
Those we do have. All right, so I'm gonna skip Village Place for a moment since that's on the agenda and more depth further down. I did want to give an update on the sale of the 615 main building to the CPWD. They are completed. We extended the period to close to November 30th on the sale. They are conducting a survey right now that will be done by the end of this month because, sorry, I'm muting so this doesn't keep digging at us. Because there's, you know, it's downtown Longmont. The property lines were drawn very, very long ago, and all the buildings on this block don't even match up with them. So they're conducting a survey just to make sure they know where the property boundary is, and if we need to, we would talk about how they would maintain legal access to the driveway in front, because that would still be on this property. So we're just working through those motions and working with the title company, and we should be closed by November 30th. And that's when the services MOU would kick into, is once we close. We would start providing disability-related services to residents. On the Ascension Hoover project, we're continuing with design development in anticipation of being awarded tax credits. We made that lots of projects kind of hold at this point once they've submitted for tax credits and wait to see if they were awarded. But we know we're going to do this project whether it's this tax credit round or another. So we're moving forward on design with the intent to be able to submit to the city for our first round of review once we do get tax credits awarded, which would be about November. And we have been putting in grants left and right, or speaking to potential funders, because we're trying to make sure that the Early Childhood Education Center can be included. And so we already have a potential commitment of $750,000 from the Longmont Community Foundation. They're going to be presenting that to their board on this coming Thursday morning. And so we're hopeful that that will all work out, because that would be wonderful. We've put in for the Strong Communities grant. This is a state grant, and we have a pre-app with them next week. So that would also be very helpful. And then we're just continuing to talk to people and put out feelers to try and make sure we can get that funded. The goal really is, I mean, the Wild Plum Center, who is, they're confirming with their board how on board they are until they have to know what the funding situation is, because if we don't have enough funding to complete the entire construction of the ECE, they can't, their model does not support rent. They can't pay rent. They need to own their building and not have that as part of their operational costs, because they just don't make enough money to cover that with serving the populations that they do. And so we're continually talking with the Wild Plum Board, keeping them apprised, and once we start getting money in the door, we'll get something more formal from them. But it's all, everyone's committed and working great, and we're hopeful that by the time we get the tax credit award, if we do this round, we've got the ECE funded as well. The Crispin project, building 3 is now up. Building 4 is starting. So I haven't gotten a more recent update, but they were still planning on leasing up and to be occupied in about February. And so now I need to check in with them if they will start with one building, even though construction's still ongoing on the rest. I'll see how that's going in terms of making sure that lease up starts in February, but that should be coming. And the Zinnia project, we have a groundbreaking next Tuesday at 11:30. Let's make sure to invite them if we didn't already. Make sure you all get the invite for the groundbreaking ceremony. And they're going vertical. I haven't been to the suites in a couple weeks. Do you know what it looks like as of lately?
I think they're pouring cement this week. They've been off and on pouring cement.
Oh, they haven't started framing yet?
No, I think that's the end of the month.
Okay. I guess that makes sense to do a groundbreaking before you go start framing anyways. They're not great at breaking ground because the dirt's already moved and they already have foundations poured, but it's a little less messy out there to bring a bunch of people in.
Better safety.
Yeah. And then Recovery Cafe, I believe I gave an update last month that we've determined that the building and the permitting of that building attachment to the suites is feasible. The construction cost estimate is around $5 million. And so right now they're still continuing with design and they're sorting out capital campaigns and putting out funding requests to Worthy Cause and others to try and get more money in the bank to be able to do it. Hey, Harlan. And that's what I have for development project updates. Is there any questions?
I do have a question.
Okay.
I know this is going to surprise you all. I have looked at Chrisman from the street, and is that the actual color of the building that we are, which doesn't exactly match the rest of the area. So I just was wondering if that was the end color.
That is the end color. They had some samples up early on, and the blue was much too, it was like a sky blue. It was very wrong. And so they did change that to a more of a stone blue, which I think looks nice. The orange is very orange, if that's what you're thinking. But yes, that is the color scheme. What I don't know, and I can ask Danny this over at MGL, I saw that the two buildings that they put in are the same, but are they gonna mix it up on the next two, or are they all going to be that look? Yes, that is the look.
Okay.
It's a bright orange. I thought it would be like a burnt orange, but it's
It'll fade eventually.
It looks nice when the sign that goes down the vertical sign, that helps tie it all together a little bit, I think, but it is still striking. Is there any interest in hearing an update about the Adrian house that we talked about last month? So we finalized the management agreement. It did end up looking a bit different from what we reviewed, but it was really all on the legal side. It wasn't anything substantive to the way LHA would manage it. We did change the term to 10 years because that's how long we've got built in to pay off the Affordable Housing Fund loan that was put into the rehab. And so the council will be considering that tonight. They have to do 2 readings because it's a lease. So tonight and then on the 26th. And then the LHA board, it will reconsider it on the 26th since the attorneys made tweaks just to the form of the agreement, basically. And so it will be rent ready as of October 1st. And we actually have a approved 4-bedroom voucher holder family that is geared up and ready to go. And so we will have a tenant ready to rock. So what we're doing right now is final punch list items on the construction, making sure we're working with open space because there's a locked gate that the farmer behind it has access to. We're doing all the coordination stuff to make sure it's a smooth move in for the tenant. So that's our first one out of the gate, and there will be more to come. Probably more like next year. Any Yeah,
So you guys are not working on, are these owning single family homes?
So the
Because I wasn't
city,
here last.
that's right, oh, that's right, I was, because you were virtual the one before. All right, so the city owns multiple properties around town for water or open space purposes. Most of them around Union Reservoir that we're involved in, they have homes on them, and some of them are leased back to the original owner as long as they manage the ag associated with it.
Okay.
So there are 4 or 5 houses that the city, in about 2019, council said, if we own homes and we have an affordable housing shortage, why would we rent those at market rate? Let's rent them affordable. So the first one was a 100-plus-year-old house and needed a big renovation. So we use the Affordable Housing Fund to do that, and it will get paid back through lease proceeds, and we're renting it to a voucher holder.
Just bringing it up because UCHA has several properties in the city of Longmont. It's looking at disposing of.
Really?
Potentially, so could be another win-win. Let's talk.
That's not bad.
Are those the single families or duplexes?
Single families, duplexes, quads.
Yeah, they mentioned that.
It's not a done deal. We're exploring the
Alright.
whole thing, but
I asked if they were gonna met test them. And they're, and I said, well, if I'm gonna buy anything, I'm gonna met test it.
yeah.
And so, we'll see, but it's interesting on that now in the for sale market, we had, a quad, no, 6-plex sold on the private market. They tested it and it came back hot. So buyers are now
They're smart.
met testing acquisitions.
And we are leading those owners, like literally holding their hands on cleanup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their phone. It's sad.
Talk about a funding opportunity if the state could put something together for that.
Yes.
Well, let's chat.
Okay.
Okay.
Outstanding. Let's just move
But
on.
yeah, they reached out to the mayor, and so we're waiting on something on that.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to 6.
Okay, I'm just gonna keep rolling along.
Yep.
All right, so several months ago, we talked about making updates to the property tax exemption partnership policy to reflect the wave of income averaging projects that are now coming through for LIHTC and that did not fit well under what we had written up just in February for our tax policy. So what you have in your packet is a redlined version. It's primarily to address income averaging, but then there was a couple opportunities that Katie, our development project manager, in recent experience with Xenia and other projects, made a recommendation for us to consider. So I thought I would throw that into here to see if you would recommend anything to the LHA board regarding those. So on the first page, I don't know what page in your packet, but the first page of the policy, you see red lines there. So here's just a clarification about how this policy is really around property tax exemption, but there's a separate process for sales and use tax exemption. But if you qualify for this, you would qualify for that as well. It just clarifies that, which is just making sure everybody understands, because there's confusion when some developers had read it. Moving to page 2, we ended up reworking the affordability criteria a bit to make sure it was just really, once you added in income averaging, it kind of contradicted itself. Coffee's not kicked in. So the first option, and this is really intended to be for a traditional LIHTC project or just if it's not LIHTC, something that is intended to be an affordable property. So at least 50% of the units, so it must be restricted to 60% AMI or less. And then in option 2, this is where we bring in the income averaging, where you have to have at least a 60% AMI on average, and then as well as you have to bring in more 30% AMI units, because that's really the intent, at least from our view. The benefit of income averaging is not just to boost the project financially, it's to allow more 30% units, which is what is most difficult to include and most needed. Is there any questions on that? That's really the meat of this so far. And that 15%, it says at the end, at least 15% of the overall unit mix must be affordable to households earning 30% AMI or less. That is vetted because the first two income averaging projects that came through, Hover and Atwood, both of those would have met that threshold, and when you looked at the overall mix, it looks like an appropriate number, and more 30% units that we've never been able to get on any other deal so far. And then we just clarify our third bullet here. Regardless of the option chosen above, at least 20% of the units must be below 50. And that's really tied to our Longmont Inclusionary Housing Code, where we start really considering a property doing above and beyond the inclusionary housing requirement. Once they meet 20%, they can start qualifying for incentives. But if you can't meet that, then it's not really considered a truly affordable property, but you could still get some of it. Is there any questions before I move on?
I have a question on the partnership fee. So is it like a tiered approach? So if you reach 25% or more units that are below 30%, it's 10%.
Yeah.
It doesn't even move to the next
So
level.
if you scroll down to yes, thank you. And we've got it's written in, the tiering is written into the policy, and then I also have attached the template calculator, which does show how you can tier it out that way. So if you do, let's see, if you have 50% or more units at 30% AMI, then your fee is only 5% of the property tax. And then it goes up as you get higher affordability. So it is tiered. So it's incentivizing deeper affordability, certainly.
Are you thinking about it?
Okay.
Are you thinking over that tail?
All right, I'm scrolling down to our next edits. On page numbers on here. Page 4. This is just a clarification about how we would take these to the board and the timing, because we needed some flexibility in there for some projects. And then moving down to application and partnership fees. So this is a question that Katie, our development project manager, came up with. Our application fee is $5,000. This can be waived if LHA is in the partnership, but it's generally intended to cover the costs of attorneys to enter onto your, enter in as a partner on the entity that the partnership is. Thank you.
I would lower the application fee and then write in a line that says you'll be fully reimbursed for your legal fees.
That's what so it could be, in some instances, it could be quite simple. In some instances, it may not be simple.
Exactly.
And so,
$5,000 isn't gonna cover Brian Cave's bill.
right, just to add LHA in the most simple terms, just to add LHA on as a special limited partner.
Yeah.
So so that's one recommendation. Is there any other thoughts or discussion about that? Do we just say you'll cover actual fees incurred with a minimum?
Yeah, like I think BCJ, it's $500 application fee. And then we usually try to cap it at like $5,000 or $10,000 for legal fees, depending on how straightforward it would be, but I would recommend having that be paid back so that you're not coming out of pocket for that.
My only question was what are other housing authorities charging units, at least for BCH?
This 5,000 was put in here when reviewing others as well.
Okay.
They're kind of all over the board. Some of them have very low application fees, but then higher annual management fees. Some, it's just where you're gonna front load it. And the intent for us is really to cover our costs of legal, and then our costs of the staff time to administer. And that's really built in more to the annual fee.
And I think that's fair, because if they're paying a small fee for you to just look at it and see if it's
Right.
even worth your time.
Spend time.
So I think it would be fair to lower the application fee and then get reimbursed for actual expenses. And then I noticed the partnership fee is a one-time fee.
Yep.
You don't have any payment in lieu of taxes, so you don't have any ongoing fees in case, if they're getting the full benefit of a tax exemption and they have money left over in their operating budget, because they're income averaging, you could draw additional funds instead of just the $1,000. We call it a compliance fee or a asset management fee.
We do have one in there.
Will that cover?
How does BCHA do, I mean, we have a compliance fee in here, in essence, an annual fee. And that really is to cover staff time for the annual, like we have to review, they need to send us their audits, et cetera.
But you guys have to do an audit as well.
Right, do you have a clause in the BCHA policy that covers the operating?
It's not a set amount with each one, it's negotiated. But I've seen them where they're like $3,000 or $4,000 a year.
And it depends on the performance, how it looks. Okay, let me make a note on that.
We have one partnership in Lafayette where they pay a significant fee every year. A management, like a compliance and asset management fee with an escalator every year. So it goes up by like 2%.
And then you wanna make sure that's higher in the waterfall. Because if it's below, then you never see it.
Yeah, above the line or below, that's for the financial folks too, I imagine.
That's where our legal fees start knocking.
Yeah.
And going back and forth and playing ping pong.
Similar to not capping the legal fee reimbursement, I think you probably want to not under cap it, meaning not, so it's going to be based off the pro forma, but not less than $1,000 a year or something like that.
Making some notes. Any other ideas? Just throw them out. Okay. Moving to the next piece. Okay, so on the next page we're starting to talk about the time period and the affordability. We're just including income averaging in that as an option. And that is then reflected on the template calculator where you can make sure that you get those included in there. Okay, moving to the second to last page. So we're talking about the incentive for LHA to be the property manager. This is something we just added in February. We basically provide a 10% boost to the fee calculation. So for example, if a project qualifies for 25% fee, so that means 25% of the property tax exemption, the value of the property taxes need to be paid as a fee, then that fee would be reduced to 15% if you bring on the LHA as a property manager. So the intent of that was to incentivize developers to work with LHA, and then we would then bring in income on the management side. But we have a comment here from Katie. Should we consider taking this out? It gives them a discount on a 15-year benefit when property management agreements are only for 1 year, and they could drop LHA after that. They may be for longer, but some of them are, they certainly aren't always for 15 years. Maybe something more vague, like LHA could consider a reduction in percentage for LHA managed projects, but she thinks that taking it out entirely is better because these projects, sorry, I lost myself. They're applying, I'm sorry, I'm reading her comment out loud, and it's general speak. They need the tax exemption for the project to come to fruition. So LHA might as well get the revenue now. So the Hobart project qualifies for a 25% fee. It is going down to 15% as is, because LHA will manage the property. That's a $200,000 discount, which is 2.5 years worth of management fee. So we were incentivizing property management with LHA, which would bring in income, but that income compared to the discount we're giving is off kilter, is what her recommendation is.
Well, I think you get the discount if you sign a 15-year lease, and you don't entertain. What you want to do is make sure that the lease term is greater to accrue more dollars in the managing component.
Have you seen, what's the typical term of the management agreement that you've seen?
I don't know that I know ours or will be, or we're the manager. I don't know what the term is, but I know that would be heavily negotiated with the investor and lender. There's always the option to remove them if you're not performing.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Ours have always been 1 year and then it just automatically renews
Yeah.
unless terminated, so it's never, ever been, even more than a year. It's when
I see her point. And I don't know if a 15-year management agreement would be something that lender and investor would.
I certainly wouldn't expect that Zinnia would be willing to do that, because I think that, who knows, with some developers have different models. Some want to stay in for a long time, some don't necessarily. And like Chrisman wants it to transfer over, in this case to LHA, so that's a safeguard there, but they do want to do the deal and then exit, and if they have a 15-year on there, I don't know if that would screw up their.
Well, I'm just thinking through the timing. They wouldn't be paying the fee until financial closing. By then, they would have negotiated all of their LPAs with their lender and investor. So they would have reviewed the 15-year commitment. That would determine what they pay. I say keep it in as an option if they're willing to sign a 15-year management fee or management agreement, where the only time you could be removed is if you're not performing.
Or you just negotiate, to the point, keep it in but negotiate it, because if 2 years is the is the magic number, and then a 7-year or 5-year may work because you're now getting more management fee than you're getting in the discount. So
we could adjust the discount based on the term of the management fee too.
And we've also negotiated at BCHA where we'll take on the management, like we have the option, if we so choose, to become the property manager after 2 or 5 years or something, but.
Well, then would you want that in a property that you're not determining who comes in? Somebody else is determining because it's some other voucher agency that's actually filling the need.
Give an example.
MHP is the example. They determine who goes into the suites. So do we need something on our side, LHA's side, to be able to terminate?
Yeah, you
and
would
not have that 15-year. Because that's the only, my concern is if, we're not performing, they can terminate. How can we terminate if we're in a 15-year lease? So we want to have some stipulation there of.
Well, in the management agreement, not necessarily in this though, because I don't want to overlap too much with the management agreement. We're just talking about how to calculate the fee, but then we would certainly want to negotiate that once we're doing management.
Oh, I thought you were saying that was part of the fee. If they sign a 15-year lease, then, or management agreement, then they're getting a discount. But there's an option for them to terminate, but not an option for us.
Well, we wouldn't be negotiating the management agreement necessarily at the same time. That would come later. So they're making a commitment to us that the LHA board, it's like formalized through a board action, that they will commit to us in X number of year management agreement, and then we get that in place, and then we go and negotiate the management agreement, make sure that's hit, and whatever else.
Kinder just gave me an idea. So on some of these properties, an MHP example, and what we're dealing with the suites.
And remember, MHP had nothing to do with property management.
I get it. I'm just saying, there's a point in some of these properties in the societal impact that we're dealing with in terms of the broader challenges that we have as a community. Yeah, what I'm thinking about is if you get this property tax, if you get the waiver and you pay the fee, if we can find a way to tie it to management of the property and dealing with the issues that are impacting.
We did that in the last edit.
Okay.
So further down, you'll see that we, I have to find it. We certainly put that, we said that it has to be crime-free multifamily housing, maintain decent, safe, and sanitary living conditions. If you do not adhere to the requirements of these, including Longmont Code enforcement directives, and generally make a concerted effort to properly maintain and monitor the activities on site for the benefit of the residents, then we could pull it. We put that in this.
We're also at Longmont Public Safety Directives. Because most of our issues aren't code enforcement related.
Adding a comment.
So maybe where it says, if the property is no longer in compliance with affordability covenants, requirements, or agreements, you can add something in there.
Yep, we have a whole paragraph down under the partnership terms. New word in the comment bubbles screw me up every single time. There we go. I can easily add that into the section that we already talked about commitments basically for the residents.
The only reason I'm saying that, I mean, for the board, we've been talking about issues that we're having on other properties, that at the end of the day, the tax exemption is outpacing the operational expense that we're having to put in for police and fire. And at a certain point, it makes no sense to give them the tax exemption if we're
Spending
giving
more
that
tax money there.
Tax money that you're not getting.
$100,000 trying to deal with an issue.
Okay.
So I think something else I noticed in a recent, because I'm working on a partnership deal right now. If they, this is something that can be reserved for later, but I think it's worth making a note so that we won't forget, but if they sell the property at any point, their interest, and you have to renegotiate an LHAAB, you should get their legal fees covered again.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So where did we land on the partnership fee discount? Was that, the recommendation is just that they tie it to the negotiated term of the management agreement?
I think so. Scale it,
1.5 to like 1.5. So if it's 2
Yep.
years.
something, some sort of
Yeah.
proportionate scale.
Do you think there's projects where they, if they didn't get a discount to the management, to the partnership fee, that they wouldn't apply and move forward?
No.
Because the tax exemption is so great?
The tax exemption,
I mean, they need it to be financially feasible, right?
most do. If they're deeply affordable, they certainly do because, well, that's obvious. But because
They're
it's
affordable, they're already getting a discount.
right, if the tax exemption is proportionate to the affordable units, we have some discretion to say what is an affordable unit. This is basically making it 80% and below as long as you meet certain conditions. So if you have a higher AMI level in your property, then you are getting more income, which would be more tax, but also you still have some cash flow. It's kind of a balance. If you have low AMIs, you don't get much income, but you also you need that tax exemption to exist. So they kind of all need it, and we have it in the past several deals that we've done. Not a single partner has blinked an eye about the fee. It's about the long-term benefit to the property.
So then I guess it's almost like we're flipping it then by saying, we'll give you a reduction in the partnership fee if you commit to a longer management agreement. So there's you're flipping it so that there's benefit to the LHA that outweighs the partnership fee reduction.
Right.
So you just want to make sure that math is really in your favor then.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna do it by 5% and the break-even point's 2.5 years, it's a 5-year commitment or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's proportionate to the time.
Plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to move back up for a moment too. I am inserting page numbers right now for the final version because I'm already needing it. So on the page where we're breaking down the calculation methodology, I skipped over a comment there. Katie recommended that we look at the cap rate that we put in here. This cap rate is not set to change per the policy. It is what it is, but recent economic conditions have changed enough where the cap rate might be different. I tried to look it up. It's a little out of my wheelhouse, but it seemed to be all over the place. I saw 4% somewhere, 7% somewhere. So I was gonna ask this group if anybody has the expertise, what a good source would be to look that up on a consistent annual basis, or if we should even consider updating it first on an annual basis. Does anybody?
I don't know enough about, that's like a whole
This is getting technical.
nitty gritty, yeah.
So on the lending side, when we look at an appraisal, the appraiser identifies a cap rate just based off of market conditions for recent sales. So they'll take the sales price, they'll get an NOI for the property, and they'll back into it, and then they'll do some average and adjusting. I don't know if there's a national source, and you wouldn't want to use a national source. I don't know that there's a Colorado source that is an actual reference. It's a point in time.
Yep. So this was put in at the recommendation of Sarah Bott, one of our tax credit finance consultants, and that's kind of like an average over time. And so I think we are in a more extraordinary financial state of the world today than 2 years ago when this was put. Well, that was extraordinary in a different way. But should we look at changing this annually, or do we think that change is enough to make that even worth it?
I would almost say you wanna look at it with every deal. You don't put 5%, you just say cap rate based on the market.
Yeah.
And
Based
then-
on the appraisal.
Yeah, and then you go from there, because you can have highs, you can have lows. Especially since you're already seeing it standard all over the place.
Does that come through the appraisal or the market study, or both? I feel like it's in the market study as well.
It might be in the market study, it's certainly in the appraisal. The problem with it, if you pull it from the appraisal, the timeline to where you have this negotiated is
Right.
prior to having the appraisal. Unless
It'll
you
be
order,
for
unless you order
vacant
your
land
own. which you
versus-
can-
Well, right,
Yeah.
that's, in the Hoover example, we had a cap rate in there, but it's vacant land, so it's,
Not the same as a multifamily building.
I'd get putting a percentage and making it annual if we were getting like all these deals monthly, but we're not, so I think it should be on a per basis.
the only struggle with that is they can't, as they're preparing a pro forma, before they know, they're trying to gauge whether this is a deal worth doing.
Yeah.
They won't have that much detail early enough.
We may want to talk to Western states to see if they could look at the site plan and give an estimated. They go through their appraisal process and see if there's a way they can come up with a.
I can look through a recent appraisal too and see if there is a specific index, published index that we could look at.
And then when I was researching, it does seem that CHAFA doesn't provide any specificity, but there are other states out there that do provide like a LIHTC specific cap rate, because I assume that would be different from typical multifamily. All right, we gotta research this one a little bit. Okay, we'll dig in on that one. And I'm noting that Josh will take a look. Okay, now I'm going back down.
You know, they call Fannie Mae. I just saw something from them.
I mean, we could just also pull our recent market studies for LIHTC deals in the city and see what they'll say, and if they really vary much. They might not vary much. If it doesn't vary much, then I would be in favor of keeping it simple and looking at it like every 5 years or something, but maybe it's not worth looking at every deal or every project if it really doesn't vary that much. But we'll see what it says. Okay, moving back down. So we've already gone over the property manager benefit. Okay, the last large chunk of red lines that you see in here, this I want to play with. I didn't have time to do it before this, but this is a term that Ben from Brian Cave added in our Zinnia deal, and it seems it's extremely legalese. And so for a policy, I want to play with it a little bit and make it a little more easy to understand. But generally, it's just talking about re-reviewing every 3 years, making sure this is still worth doing, etc. You have to determine financial viability, making sure the debt rate, debt service coverage ratio is good, just protecting LHA in case this property tanks financially. So let me know if there's any questions on that. I'm certainly going to make it not sound like a legal resolution.
Yeah, because you would negotiate the more nitty-gritty details in the LPA, but I think just notification that it'll be reviewed every 3 years after the compliance period would be good. And I think you should increase your consultation fee and add escalator.
Is that our bottom section? Okay. Putting that in.
That's far too low.
Consider. And again, the examples that we reviewed and when putting this together, it's all over the board. Some do a high upfront fee and low long-term fees, some switch it. It's just what are we trying to do with it? Is there any other thoughts or comments on this? We will plan to take this to LHA board at the October 17th meeting. Okay, that's that item then.
Okay. Should we move on to the village lending?
Sure. So, we're getting to the fun parts. So I'm gonna let everybody, after the meeting, you can all come over here and review these as much as you want. I'm just gonna set them out. You can see what our proposed floor plan is. This is this floor right here. So the main change really is just what we're gonna do in this room. It's gonna stay the same shape and everything, but we're just trying to make it a living space, an accordion fold so that you could separate them and use them for different purposes if you want. We're going to try and reuse the tables and chairs as much as we can, probably reupholster, make it all not plural. And then our fitness room is moving up here, which you'll see why when we go through the second floor. Laundry room, still there. Redoing the kitchen, this is huge. So the kitchen would not be a commercial kitchen anymore. It would be a typical residential multifamily kitchen. And this wall around the corner would be opened up so that there's a nice countertop for potlucks and things, and it's just gonna be much more usable. The residents don't even, it's just shut off and totally unused at this point. So I'll let you browse this after. What else do we have? This is our unit layouts, just some examples. I'm just gonna be putting these around. It just really shows what flooring will be carpet and what would be laminate vinyl tile would look. And outside is a landscape markup. We've got a new patio and barbecue area here. There'll be a barbecue. This is like a pergola type structure with some benches and rearranging the parking and the dumpster area so it's not all, we got more ADA parking. And then moving the dumpster so it's not right there, right next to the patio, and it's nice to be around. And then second floor. So we are adding extra laundry up here and adding a bathroom because there's no public restroom on the second floor. So that's the major change here. We're keeping these two common spaces, but just making them more purposeful as a game room and an art room. And we like we're missing the first floor. Oh, that's the third. Let's see. That's the most important part. This kind of shows it. I thought we had more blown up one. Thank you. But in the lobby, what we're going to do is the atrium is going to stay. The two largest trees have to go because they drop sap and nobody will sit under them. And so they're completely unusable. Nobody uses them at this point. We're going to make a new ADA ramp that goes up. It'll be nice and open. It'll be a little coffee bistro over here. And it'll pop out so that you can sit in the atrium area, a little bit elevated. Just feels like a nice place to hang out. And then still have the two seating areas here. And then rearranging the office to add a conference room and just making this a lot more usable. So feel free to come and check these out after. And then these are our carpet and flooring samples and paint samples that we were considering. We presented these to the residents here a few weeks ago, and the feedback was generally great. Really, it was trying to be warm and homey and kind of more of a classic look, not too modern. And then again, on the outside, make it fit in with historic downtown Longmont. Trying to get red brick by staining it, make it not pink, make it look like it's old, even though it is built in 1990. So I just encourage everyone to go check those out. Some of those carpets would be in different areas. So the hallways get one, this gets one, the units get one. I can't remember off the top of my head which one goes to which right now, but it's generally just to get an idea of what's coming. I wanted to go over some of the major design decisions that we're working through right now. So the biggest one is solar panels. This is a huge effort, as it turns out. So there are solar panels on the ceiling now. They are not photovoltaic for energy. They are for a water heating system. The technology, they were put on about 2007. The technology is already totally out of date. They don't function right now, but we've got them mounted. So we wanted to look and say, could we replace those with photovoltaic to offset the energy here? And is that worth doing? And so this has been a very complex decision with weight loads on the roof and type of roof. And we have, because this was originally set up to be a typical multifamily apartment complex, we have 72 different electric meters downstairs, which means every single time our meter readers come out, they have to read 72 different meters, and the meter fee for reading for each one is $14 per month. And so that is $12,000 a year that we pay for basically no reason. We don't need to. And if we put solar on, there's not enough room in the mechanical room to hook up 72 meters to the solar. So we would have to convert to a master meter, which is complicated because the lead time is over a year to get the equipment to do it because of supply chain issues. And we would have to shut down the power for a period of time to get them all on that. But in the end, that would save us $12,000 a year on unnecessary fees that we really don't need to pay because LHA already pays all the bills, all the utility bills for these residents. It's not like every resident pays their own anyway. So if it's one bill, it's actually 72 bills that we pay at once, then why pay that fee? So between that and the offsets from the energy that the solar would produce, it looks like we would save the property about $25,000 a year through the life of the solar panel. So it's worth doing as long as we can afford to do it. We would get a 30% tax credit. That's a whole process in itself. But this is just want to highlight an example of how all of these design decisions all play together and how complicated it gets. But it looks like we've come to resolution that the solar is feasible, we can afford to do it, and it's worth it. So that's the plan. Pricing, we're waiting for pricing next, but we at least we know what the solar pricing would be, but overall pricing for the project, we gotta make sure we can afford everything that we want.
And then you extra money to apply to the county for sustainability tax funds.
Yep, we've been working with LPC too on how that would all fit together. So they're still looking out there for stuff. But I'll make a note to make sure that that is certainly on the radar.
How does the tax credit work with the nonprofit status you sell it?
So it's actually not a nonprofit. So the general partnership is not officially a nonprofit. LHA is not officially a nonprofit. So there would be, the tax credit is anticipated to be 30%. There is a new program out there, we're going to apply for an additional 20%, but nobody's gone through it yet. We don't know what the timeline is or how feasible it is, but we're going for it. What were you thinking specifically?
Well, I guess I didn't realize, I was thinking that there was a nonprofit status, and if it's a federal tax credit, then you don't get any benefit because you're not paying taxes. But if that's not the case, then that doesn't matter.
So LHA does extend the tax exempt status to the property, but for construction, but the tax credit does end up, it's with the investor, and then it comes in over time because we only get the tax exempt sales and use tax at least up front. So I don't know.
The solar one is a weird one.
It's very weird. It's its own tax credit system
Right.
that layers with the LIHTC. It's been around for a while, pretty standard, but I don't know the exact mechanics of how that works.
So will we still have an individual meter for every unit?
No, the idea is to get the master meter.
Okay, so we might have to figure out how we're gonna do stormwater. Because
We've already
stormwater
got a
is,
process for that. Because we already have projects that are master metered.
okay, well, they haven't done any of ours.
Yeah, so we'll just need to talk with Becky on that one, but I think it's per unit. So we'll have to just work that with Bill.
So that's just one example of all of the decisions at play. There's conversations flying around constantly about everything. There's plenty of other idiosyncrasies that if you want to have a conversation offline, I will tell you about. There's plenty of stories. Weird water, like this, the whole building is on one water shut off. And so if you have to fix one person's like plumbing, you have to shut the whole building up. So we're trying to change that to help ongoing operations, a bunch of things. So we're in the fine-tuning phase of design. We walked the building with a ton of subcontractors on Friday to start getting true pricing and start really we've got our priority list, and we're going to be working on, once we get those pricing elements in, really starting to make some real decisions about what we can manage to include. And that will also determine the schedule. So getting the subs with their pricing, they're gonna tell us what their timelines are, their availability, and what we need to do next is nail down the relocation schedule and give that to the residents as soon as we can. So by October, we plan on presenting to the residents exactly what that's all gonna look like. We do have a relocation firm that's already gotten move estimates and hotel estimates, and so we're just waiting for that schedule to put it all together. And then the last thing, is there any design questions? I'm going to talk about the loan forgiveness next. So, the original LIHTC deal from 2006 on this, when LHA bought the property, LHA received 4 funding sources that it then loaned into the Village Place partnership. One was a City Affordable Housing Fund loan that LHA has been paying that on behalf of Village Place, primarily, for the past, since 2011. And so we are requesting to City Council on September 26th if they would consider forgiving the remainder of that loan. It was a $600,000 loan, 2% interest. LHA has paid $440,000 of it, and we're requesting them to forgive the rest. One reason is that's just more money that the project would have to pay that we couldn't do other things with on site. And number two, the city is already providing a new CDBG and affordable housing loan. And so if they deny the forgiveness, the project would come back and request more of a new loan. So it's kind of a wash. Assuming council approves that on the 26th, then on October 17th, we will ask LHA to forgive the 4 funding sources that they loaned into the project. So one is that same affordable housing loan. So LHA received that from the city at 2% interest rate, loaned it into the partnership at 3.5%. And so there's a couple of options for that. They can forgive all of it, they can require a repayment for all of it, or they could require repayment for just the portion that LHA fronted on their behalf. Either way, the project would have to pay for it. The project has $350,000 slated for loan payoffs, so if so, that would probably go there. But anything not paid by the project means more features we can include. But if LHA doesn't get paid back at least what they fronted for the project to the city, then LHA's general fund, it's just a which basket do you want to pull from? And then the 3 other sources were grants to LHA, so they're really not intended to be paid back, but you loan them into the partnership because that's what you do for basis and such. So they would be requesting to forgive the remaining balances of those 3, which are quite high. So those will all be coming to the board in October as well.
On your grid, so the top loan, we say principal and interest paid is at $202,000. So that's what the partnership has repaid to LHA, but not what LHA has repaid to the city.
Yes. So the partnership has paid $202 to LHA. LHA has paid $447 off the top of my head to the city.
Is that what do you want the 202 to show, or do you want the amount that's actually been repaid to the city to show?
I want this to show because LHA, so it's the same people, right? But the city is going to consider the forgiveness for the loan where the LHA has paid $445. LHA board has to consider forgiving the loans that Village Place Associates owes LHA, which is $200.
Got it. Okay, I see the 2. That makes. Yeah.
The way that they did this in 2006 is certainly not the way we would do this today. It just makes it very confusing.
Got it.
Yeah, basically the theme was the way we used to do things. Probably starting prior to 3 years ago, we would not do it that way now.
Yeah, if it's a loan, if the city loaned the project something, it would go straight to the partnership, not through LHA. Only grants should go through LHA and then loaned in. That makes it a lot simpler.
I thought this was the request of the city, which is why but I got you.
It's 2 separate ones, 2 separate sets of numbers. That's why it's confusing. So if there's any advice that you would provide to the LHA board as they consider this, I can put that into this when we bring it forward. The real question is the affordable housing fund loan and what amount, if any, should be paid back. The other 3 are much more straightforward, but we will be providing 3 options to LHA board on the affordable housing loan.
So I have just kind of a really strange question. I know that you said you're taking out 2 trees out front.
1 tree.
Pardon?
1 tree.
In the atrium.
Oh, I'm sorry, in the atrium,
In
yes.
the back. My concern with the trees in the front, not only do you know who they belong to.
Do you mean the outside trees or?
Right here.
Okay, we're not taking out any of the outside trees.
Okay.
Just the 2 large trees inside the atrium.
Okay. So whatever that drops, which I think is flower, is there a way for somebody to spray those early in the spring before that flower comes on? Because once it drops, it is all of a sudden a safety concern.
So it's the drop, but it's also that those trees are so large that they are a threat to the foundation. They're too large to be inside the atrium at this point, and plus one of them has to come out to make the ADA ramp. But all the other trees are staying, the smaller ones, so it'll still look like an atrium. It's just the 2 trees, and we've been prepping the residents on this for a year, and I think we
Are
kind
you
of.
talking about the outside trees?
I'm talking about the trees that drum, and I think it's the flower, and I always call it a worm, because that's what it looks like on a sidewalk. But that's really a safety concern.
Outside trees, okay. I'm sorry, I'm confusing the
It
two.
drops everything right here, where people walk.
That'd be a forestry question.
Yeah, those are
it
city
was
trees.
forestry.
Well, I asked them, and they said it was LHA.
Yeah, that's kind of the,
That's, yeah.
yeah, that's the ongoing battle with
Uh-huh.
the quirkiness of this project, but we can just ask them if there's anything we can put on it.
Yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
prevent those things from falling, because I'm pretty sure it's the flower.
We are going to rework the agreement with LDDA over maintenance of this area as before November is our plan. Because there's just confusion, it's very old, it's from 1989, the agreement that says who will do what. It's not really reflecting actual practice, everyone is confused, and so we're gonna rewrite it, and make it more clear, and consider what to do with the gazebo, which is a special project of Sarah's, because that's caused public safety concerns.
So you're getting rid of the worms, right? The fall.
Well,
It's really the flower.
I can follow the forestry. It's no problem.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sure.
I think, you know, part of it is, it really is getting into the property lines. So the trees adjacent to the building, I think we know are the housing authority trees. The trees out here are a different question. And then, let's say there's nothing to put on the trees and you wanted to take them down, then we have to go through a process with the city to actually remove the trees. And if you don't, then you get fined.
You might have to replace them.
So, what's interesting, and this is what the CPWD is dealing with as well. The property boundary is actually about right here. The edge of the building is over the property boundary. Same with our little median next to the building, landscaping. That's why title is so, or survey is so wonky. And that's the same for every property down this block. The buildings are all shifted over the property lines. So that's why we coordinate with LDDA and kind of be thinking, what do you have in your wheelhouse? What do we have in our wheelhouse? We kind of share the responsibilities, even though it is city land over there. That's a fun one. And you'll be hearing more about it because it'll be.
Yeah, downtown and Old Town is not fun for us. I mean, we have it at Longmont Homes too. As you get into historic east side and west side, it's an interesting area.
Okay.
So would you, if I was gonna report to the board what the advisory board would recommend on this one, for this affordable housing fund loan, would you lay out the three options for item 1? Would you forgive the entire balance due, which is actually $863,000 because of the interest rate? Would you forgive all but $350,000 because that's what the project has budgeted? And recall that LHA has paid $243,000 on Village Place's behalf to the city when it should have been Village Place passing it through. So, or requiring that $243,000 be paid to LHA to cover the amount that they fronted.
I'd go with number 3. Get LHA's money back, and then leave some money in the project for some fun stuff.
Any other thoughts, recommendations?
I think that makes sense.
Middle ground. Couldn't get some money. She thinks
I'm happy.
she wanted more money.
Sarah's not gonna be happy about it.
Yeah.
That's all 350.
It's better than 350, but we'll see what the board says, but, okay, I will note that in this memo that I update for the board. Okay, now that is everything I had on Village Place.
Okay, next is resident quality of life. I don't think there's anything under that.
Nothing from staff.
Okay. And then LHA report. Lisa, I think that's you, right?
a whole bunch of us. So I'll start with the occupancy. Still holding on, 95, 96, we've been hovering back and forth. Do anticipate a drop for this month. We've had quite a few move-outs, residents with full-time care, and a few pass away. So we do anticipate that. We're working quickly to these. We have quite a few. Our admin assistant came back yesterday, so she's one who used to call the wait list before we were when she was on maternity. She came back yesterday, so she's gonna start calling again. So hopefully we can get these leased pretty quickly. Aspen Meadows, we still have 3 units down to meth, down for meth. 2 are very low. We're just waiting for the cleaning reports. Those ones just had to have a one each had to have a bathroom, and one had to have a laundry room as well, ripped out. So those should be easy to put back together. It's not the whole unit. D2, the 1 unit that has been down for an extended amount of time, we signed a proposal for the ductwork and the drywall. So I'm just waiting for the complete scope and insurance paperwork so we can start moving on that one and getting that one rebuilt in-house. Aspen Senior, we ended with 2 vacant and 1's been rented for the end of this month. Fall River, 3 vacants, but we're calling the wait list on them. Hearthstone, no vacancies. Lodge, 1 vacant, and that was our last eviction over there. The unit just, as we started turning the unit, ran into interesting things. The globes on the lights were super glued on, and we had to rip out the whole light. Yeah, the outlets were double-sided taped on, and just a lot more work than we anticipated when we took possession. The suites, we have the 5 vacants. 2 of them are down units for our meth, and then the 2 LHA and the 2 LHA, 3 MHP, but we're working to fill those. I know we have, I believe, all 3 rented now when I talked to Ruby and Andrea yesterday. Briarwood, there is a typo there. We have 2 units down, and both of those are meth units that are completely gutted. Had 2 different contractors walk last week, and we're just waiting on those bids. And Village Place, we're holding all units here, and we still have the 1 unit down for meth. I'm going to move on into the property updates. Just a few things that happened since I typed these up last week. Metropolitan State University, who we paired with earlier this year to do the nutrition training, they're going to start back up on the 27th of this month, and that's going to be for Aspen Senior, Aspen Neighborhood, Hearthstone, and the Lodge. So they'll be bringing their nutrition programs into the residents and doing multiple things a month around cooking classes, nutrition, and just other fun activities. Longmont Senior Services will be bringing their peer support groups into all coffee and conversations in September and October to kind of introduce what that team does and how it can help benefit the properties. And then last week, Kat and I met with Kaiser Permanente's Foundation, which is their nonprofit arm, which they are looking to bring 1 activity class to every property every month, starting next month. And this is through their nonprofit arm. They can't sales, they can't pitch KP, they can just do activities. And then if we want to do a sales pitch thing, we can, or the residents have to see them outside of that activity. So lots of fun stuff happening there. Just a few other fun things. Most of these are same things we have made offer for manager at the suites. Ruby Ford, who is our housing choice voucher specialist, will be transitioning to manager at the end of the month. For Village Place and Aspen's, our new assistant manager started yesterday. Aspen Senior, I'm working on a partnership with Wild Plum on the side to start doing intergenerational activities with the seniors at this Aspen Senior and the kids at Wild Plum, because they're right next door to each other. And Wild Plum does use us as their emergency shelter if there was ever to be a disaster, so we figured it might be a good relationship so the kids feel that that place is safe and they know that they can go there, and then the seniors aren't, why are all these kids running around? They know the kids, so.
Great idea.
And then, let's see, have a lot of inspections and audits. The suites had one last week, they have one today, they have one tomorrow. I have Spring Creek and Fall River both having mortgage inspections. Zola's coming out here to Village Place next week, so very busy. Any questions on the property?
All right. First of all, Michelle Goldman came out to Spring Creek and Fall River just a few weeks back for coffee and conversations. Very, very good turnouts, and we are hanging, or we're working on hanging the EVAC maps on every floor for the properties that don't have them. So that was great. Meth detector update, we did get a quote for the 3 that we may be purchasing. We need to circle back with staff on that. The current detectors are still reading. I mean, they definitely work, like we talked about. There are new ones that are coming in and have a different battery system, and we're going back with questions about hardwiring and when will that happen. And lastly, gazebo. I have, due to one, we need to get a scope of work done for the bid because we were asking 2 things, either a total removal, like you've asked, or just removal of the gazebo and maybe repurpose the area with maybe art in public places or something like that. So working on a scope of work to get that done, to get the bids out. I did contact 3 different contractors and they all want to bid on it. So that's that. And calls for service, you know, the suites is always #1 for us, but it's been pretty quiet. And we just recently had someone released from jail that we thought was going to cause some more problems, but has been super quiet, and that's a good thing. So everything else is pretty status quo. Any questions for me?
All right, so for me, we're in city budget conversations. Kendra and I are about to start LHA budget in the next week or so. Next week. One of the things that we did with the city council that's related to the LHA work is when we were looking at all of the projects that we have going on right now, specifically looking at Katie's workload in terms of Chrisman, Element, or Zinnia, and then Ascent, and looking at staffing loads, and then looking at the funding sources that are available at the state for affordable and attainable housing, because Katie does both. As we're looking at this, we talked to the council last Tuesday as part of the Affordable Attainable Housing Fund budget presentation, and specifically asked them to adjust the administrative cap from 10% to 20% so we can hire more staff to actually come in and take these projects on, and then give us some capacity to go for more of the state funding for all of these projects. The council did say yes to that, and at the same time, I asked for direction to allow me to use on the city side, but it does impact the housing authority, cost savings or dollars that we have in the organization to go ahead and fund those positions so we can start the hiring process now as we start looking to the next year. And so that's actually really good news for everything that we're doing here, because it gives us the ability to start turning more projects on an annual basis. What we didn't say is, in addition to the Ascent project and the tax credit process, we're also partnering with the developer on 3rd and Atwood in the Flytech process. So we have 2 projects now. And if that moves forward, we'll need to be involved, because we'll also have that was one of those where we negotiated the management responsibility for that project. And then if the voters in November pass the recreation package that's put forward to the community, that joint project with the city and the Y actually will include 100 affordable housing units, of which we're gonna be involved in that and have to work through the same LHAAB process. So, a lot of projects in the hopper, and we needed the increased staffing to start helping us manage that. In terms of the budget, I know we're still looking at, some positions, that we need to fill in this budget process. In addition, you know, one of the things that this board worked on in conjunction with the city council was the VIA project. I know Arlene's been really interested in that. We are gonna be able to carry some money over next year from what the city council allocated based on current projections. But Kendra and I have talked about how we start including that in the ongoing budget so that, you know, it's just a permanent fixture in terms of the services that we provide to the residents of all the properties. One of the things that's helping us in this budget process is I think we did finally transfer the snowplow. So as we look at the operating budget for next year, definitely factoring that into each one of the properties in terms of, and that's actually making a pretty significant difference in the ongoing operating revenues for the properties, as we're assuming all the plowing work. And we still need to get some more equipment, and that's just based on right now the supply chain. We have a second truck identified, and then the manufacturer canceled our order for the other trucks, so we weren't able to do the switch with the city. As we look at the budget generally, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it this year or not. Molly and I have been talking in addition to some of the staffing issues. You know, really within the next year, trying to create an assistant director position that'll slide in and do some of this work, because the work that Molly's doing in HCI and other things with Prop 123 funds and everything starting to come into play, we're seeing that work start to really increase. And I'm managing people's workloads right now in terms of what we can absorb and how much, and trying not to constrain the pipeline of housing. So I did have that conversation with the city council as part of my review and kind of what's on the horizon, and giving, you know, now more so that right now, Molly's the one underwater. At certain times we'll both be underwater. It depends what's happening when, and just needing to provide some relief to some folks. I think that's all I have. Is there anything you want me to say?
Nope, we'll be going over the budget in more detail on the October 10th advisory board meeting, because that will also go to the board on October 17th.
Yeah.
So we'll give you more detail.
Yeah, is there any other business as far as any of the advisory council members have questions or comments or compliments? I just have one which came up at another meeting that I attended, and I think it's probably a federal issue. But somebody was concerned that the rate that's being used for the AMI, or for the 30% or whatever it is, when's the last time that was looked at? They think it's not exactly accurate.
So you mean in rents or just generally in housing when we're
And it came up in rents, but yeah, it's kind of a general term.
So that's the federal standard. HUD uses 30% of your income and says that housing is affordable to you if you don't spend more than 30% of your income. For city programs, so this is not LHAAB.
I think the question is the 30% AMI.
And that's set annually by HUD.
Yeah.
30% AMI or 30% of your income?
The AMI.
AMI.
Yeah.
That's set yearly by.
Yes.
Yeah, it's yearly.
Thank you.
Okay. And it's depends on the county. Yeah, county, Boulder County has one of the highest AMIs in the state. So the good news is you can make more money and still be 30%.
Qualify for homeowner assistance.
Okay.
Thank you. I was hearing that wrong.
I probably said it wrong. Okay, motion to adjourn. We are.
We've never been early in a long time.
I guess we